welcome to My Accent is No Accident. I am your host, Maritza Perez. We are here today with an entrepreneur who dedicates her time to help others find their dream job. Her name is Myriam-Rose Kohn. Myriam has worked in the career field for more than 25 years and helped countless of people worldwide reach a fulfilling life by getting paid for work they enjoy doing, whether as an employee or an entrepreneur. Miriam work has been published in more than 35 books and in careerjournal.com. She speaks 5 languages and taught at the university for 20 plus years. Today, she's known as the dream job expert. Miriam has gone through 2 career transitions herself, which makes her an excellent guide to her clients' journey. Miriam, it is an honor to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Thank you very much, Marissa. Likewise, it's an honor for me to be able to add to your, is this a podcast?
Yes, it is a podcast.
To your podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And it is a pleasure. I love to see, to hear all about your work. But first, I would like to ask you my first question. Please, Miriam, tell me, what is your accent and why is not an accident?
Well, I was born and raised in Belgium. So English is my third language, which is why I have an accent. But yes, languages have been actually on my accent, has actually been on my side, because when, I coach my clients now, if they want to work abroad, they say, she's from there, so she knows something about it. And for people who want to work from abroad and come into the United States, they think, well, she made it, so we can do it too. So either way, it's an advantage for me to have an accent.
Excellent. So you have learned 5 languages.
Uh-huh.
What languages do you know?
Well, in Belgium, when you have to remember now, it's a long time ago, because a lot of the stuff I was taught is obsolete today because of technology. But when I went for business school to be an administrative assistant, we had to do shorthand typing in 4 languages, because Belgium is mostly a transit country and they wanted to make sure we could communicate with all the countries around us. So we had to do it in French and Dutch, English and German. And the reason why I have Italian is because I went 9 years to the music academy. And as you know, Italian is a language for music. So I love Italian, and I just added it. But yes, that's why I have so many languages.
Oh, wow. But you have German, English, and Dutch, which are some of the most spoken languages in the world.
Well, the French is a diplomatic language, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Dutch, not so much, but it's been very helpful, obviously. I've taught it. I'm still teaching it for those people who work for large companies and need to move to the Netherlands, mostly where Dutch is spoken, but some of the colonies still speak Dutch as well, like Suriname, Southeast Asia. They still have some countries over there where they speak Dutch as well.
Awesome. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, you taught for 20 years in the university. Tell me, how was that journey?
Well, I love to teach. You have to understand. And that journey was, well, I started, I was mostly an adjunct professor because it's very tight in the academic world. And I taught mostly French, but also some German, Italian, and ESL, English as a second language. Um, the last years of my academic career were mostly in teaching French. And it got to be very disappointing at the end because I don't know how it was for you, Maritza, but when I went to school, we had to respect our teachers. And it wasn't for us to say what they should be teaching us, which is what it has become. The students come in, they're on their phone. You tell them not to be on their phone because they can't hear what the material that is being presented to them. But then they do it under the desk, like you can't tell by their body language what they're doing, right? And and then their attitude towards professors was very disrespectful for most of them. There are still a few who are kind and do it the old fashioned way, shall we say. And then you have, on the other hand, the policies that come down that we have to do student learning objectives. So,
Okay.
and if you don't show that the student is progressing, then you become a bad teacher, right? Or a
Yes.
poor teacher. So this is kind of a between a rock and a hard place. And at the end, I just give up because I wouldn't, I should say, pass a student who wasn't there for most of the semester, didn't do all his or her work, and then think I need to pass your class. You need to give me a passing grade. No, not equitable to the students who have been here and have done the work. So I eventually left the academic world. And since, as I said, I'm an educator, I became a coach, as it were, where I can still educate and nurture my clients because I'm also a nurturer. And my children are grown. So now I'm passing it all on to my clients. Yes. So um, I didn't know right away that I was going to go into coaching and career services, like resume writing and writing LinkedIn profiles and exec bios. Um, I also, I should say, coach my clients on how to conduct a job search, how to raise interview, uh, questions they need to pose, how to connect with the interviewer, which is 85% of success,
Yes.
and how to bring an interview back on track if it derails.
All
And
right.
then also do personal and branding strategies now. So everything with careers, and everything I've learned, and believe it or not, as I told you in the beginning, right? My accent comes in handy for those who want to work abroad and those from abroad who want to come to the United States, because there's a lot of adaptation and acculturation that needs to take place. It's not the same, right? And look, if an American person wants to go and work in Italy or France or Korea or China, it doesn't matter. If they approach, yes, they all speak English over there, especially in the business world.
Yes.
But if you approach them in their own language, it shows your willingness to adapt and to acculturate. There's a lot that goes along with that in those two words. And so it puts you at the top of the list, you see,
Yeah.
because it means you're willing to work with the natives, as it were. I don't know if that's a
Exactly.
politically correct word, but you know, that's what
Yes.
the inhabitants of the country. Yes.
That is very insightful. Thank you so much for saying that. It is very insightful because I believe that we have lost a little bit of respect for other cultures, and then it's true when in Rome, do as Rome, right?
Right. Yeah.
So we go to other countries, and yes, the very first thing that we need to do is learn another language. And it really doesn't matter how you sound. What matters is that you're willing to do it, and people actually understand you. And sometimes when you were teaching languages,
Hmm.
the different languages, one of the things that I remember is like, just try it, just try to say it. And it doesn't matter how many times you have to repeat it, you will get it one time. How did you approach that with your students?
Oh, well, if I did a 101 class, the
Yes.
students who attended and who did the work but weren't doing so well, I tended to pass because I know sometimes you need the second class and then it clicks all of a sudden. I just would not pass those students who did not attend and didn't do the work. But those who really tried and weren't a student material yet, I knew eventually they would. So I encouraged them, I tutored them, outside of class if they came to my office hours. And if, for those who worked, we always found a schedule that would fit, a time for us to meet that would fit into both our schedules. Yes, always very encouraging. That's what a teacher does, right? You
Yes.
encourage your students, you make sure they get where they need to be. So, that's another thing got me upset in academia, especially for my Spanish speaking students, because the counselors would say, take Spanish. It's easy. You'll get good grades. And I've had students come back to me and complain, no, I want to learn French. So I had to go to bat for them. I said, what are you doing? To the counselors, he wants to learn French. So French it is. And, uh, and this was a student who struggled during class hours, and it is one example. But after class, we would take time, and sometimes he only needed 15 more minutes one-on-one, and he would click and go on. So yes. A lot of people think teachers have it easy. They only teach from 8 to 3 or something like that. No, there's a lot more that goes into that.
Yes.
Preparation, getting new materials, taking time to work with your students one-on-one, which, if you have 25 students and 15 want personal time, it takes quite a bit of time. But hey,
Yes.
that's a teacher's job. So yes, like a mentor.
And
So
exactly. And a teacher is probably one of the most important, if not the most important, work and job that a human being can do,
yes,
because it holds the future of humanity.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And one teacher can make such a difference in a student's life.
Yes,
You
positive
know,
or negative.
yes. And believe it or not, at the university level, I had students and I go, what are they doing? I mean, nobody caught that they were dyslexic. How do they get to that level and be
Without
dyslexic
um
without any help to have, to be able to study better or anything like that? It really boggles the mind.
yes,
Personally, I feel because I'm in the career field now, right? I do everything to ensure my clients get where they need to be and want to be so they can lead a more joyous and harmonious life. But in this in having transitioned like that, the academic world, the universities really need to make big changes, and that I think it has to start at a lower level even because they are not preparing the students for the real world.
they are
They all
not.
have their agenda in academia, but it's not helping the students out here. So we have to work on that. They don't
Yes.
want to hear it, but
No.
it's a fact.
So I can see how that help you to transition to, the being a teacher in the university, help you transition to what you're doing right now, which
Hmm.
is helping entrepreneurs as well as employees, anyone who's in the workforce,
Right.
to find their dream job. But it
Hmm.
goes deeper than that. So let's talk about it. What is more in deep for you that you do for your clients?
Well, those people who are miserable in their jobs or unemployed or participating in the quiet quitting or quiet resignation, whatever you want to call it, they're
Yes.
not in the right place, right? Um, and like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, I've had people miserable, but miserable in their job and would not leave it. And since the pandemic, the whole employment landscape has changed. And the latest statistics show that 85% of the jobs that will be available in 2030, less than 7 years from now, do not even exist today. They're
Oh,
not even on the horizon. So people need guidance. People, because I'm sure there are other teachers who are burned out. There are medical staff who is burned out. And so, how do you reinvent yourself? I really don't like the word job because job is okay. I got to get up. I got to go to work. No, you want to look forward to your day when you get up. So I like to call them positions, right? It's a much better word, but people cannot always associate with that. But so I nurture my clients in, let me do that again. I nurture them on the way to their dream job, as it were. And that means getting paid for what they do so they go home and have a more harmonious and joyous life. And they need nurturing, as I talked to you, like I mentored my students, to do better. Often my clients have been, their parents said, their spouse said, well, what do you want to do? Sometimes they remember, sometimes they don't. So we
Okay.
have to unearth it. And then we go from there. And I encourage them, and there's resistance, right? Because they've not been able to do it their entire life up to the point when they came to see me. So that has to be encouraged and get them on the right track, because I only have my clients' best interest at heart. And if they're happy making 60,000 and not 100,000, that's good too. That's where they want to be. That's where they're happy. That's where we go. If they want to go and make a six figure, we do that. But then on the other side, you have the executives whose children are grown. They don't want all the responsibilities anymore, and they don't want to downsize. That's
Yeah.
also not easy, because then people say, well, you've earned so much money. Why do you want to work at this level? Well, because that's what I
You're
want to
more
do now.
qualified. Yes.
And that, so that's a whole other conversation. And, I have to nurture and guide them on what to do and say during the interviews to
Yeah.
make sure they're not kicked out. So that's how I transfer it. My thing is, my clients, while we work together, and sometimes after we're done, we still have conversations, somebody to call on, so they don't have to be afraid to make the journey, because it's a very scary time. I went through it, so I know. And there's nobody to turn to. So I want to be the person they turn to, when something pops up. Maybe there's a job, maybe there's a difficulty, something they did not expect. I'm the person to turn to. So that's how I nurture and mentor my clients. I don't know if that was really your question,
Yes. Yes. So,
but that's how I do it. I mean, we're all people. I just got to connect with your inner self. The answer is always within the person. The client always has the answer. They may not remember. I should say he or she may not remember. But once we unearth it, we do career exploration work first. And I don't do anything like Myers-Briggs. It scares people. We do simple things. We get to the point, and then we make sure they get on track. And like I say, today, many positions or jobs, as I say, are still a figment of the imagination. But see, the other thing is, Maritza, is that people don't realize that whether they work for somebody else or whether they work for themselves, we're all entrepreneurs. Because even as an employee, if you don't take charge of your career, nobody else will.
nobody else would. That's true.
So, yeah,
So, do you also help like brand new person that is gonna get a job, like a job for the first time?
absolutely. I have done that. And I even advise people whose children, well, they're not children in school, but are ready to start so career. Young adults, till we say, and they have no direction. First, have a conversation with a career coach, so they don't waste time and money. You get right away to the heart of the matter. Because young people say, well, I don't know. I have to check this out. I have to check that out. They do know. We just have to get it out of them, you know? So, and then, how people aim, they're trying to find themselves. Well, let's do it sooner rather than later, you
Yeah,
know? So, because education is costly today. You don't
it
want to
is.
both, you don't want to do 3 years in a certain path and then realize that's not what I want to do.
Yes.
Everybody has transferable skills, though. You have idealists. sometimes. And, like, especially with attorneys, they find out that the law practice is not really what they thought it would be. And they get disheartened. There's people all across the board in anything, get disheartened and say, so time to reboot. A person today will have 6, 7 different careers in their lives. That's how fast things are changing. So it's good to have someone you work with to keep you on the path and guide you.
And guide you.
I'm a coach. I'm not a counselor, so I will never tell my clients what to do. We discover together what it is you want to do, and then we stay on that path. And then I offer them options sometimes. It depends on what it is, Nothing is either black or white. There are different opportunities. And like I said, we don't even know what's going to happen in 7 years from now. So
exactly. And then also you also do something very encouraging, and is to get paid what they deserve.
yes, and I can often do that by just rewriting a person's resume. And the least amount, staying in the same position with the same company, the least amount, that the salary increase was $5,000. So your return on investment is already right there, more than that, right? The highest, and then there's been a whole range in between, right? At the other spectrum, I had somebody who came to me who was making 55,000. Rewriting the resume in the same place, same company, went to 75,000. And then with the company put this person in another position, and then this other person went to apply somewhere else, and when again with the new experience, we wrote a resume to 125,000. Today, that client is making 155,000. So you have from 5,000 to 100,000, and everything else in between. So it does pay to invest and have it done professionally. And if I may take a moment, Maritza, I want to caution people with a chat GPT, because yes, it will it will write a resume, but it also won't differentiate you. It's very important that 3 things has to happen with a resume. You address your prospective employer's needs, you differentiate yourself from other candidates, and third, you have to pass the applicant tracking system. And then you present it in an F format, because that's how people read, and you get the reader's eye down the page. So the first 3, though, are the most critical, and people don't realize that. And ChatGPT doesn't know you, and it doesn't know what job you're applying for. So it cannot do an excellent job. It can just give you generality. So let's get this out there right now.
Yes, it has to be done by you, right? It has to be done by
A
the
person, yeah.
person. Yes, it has to be done by the person, not an automatic asset. So on that, I would like to know if you have any tips for anyone who wants to write a resume um, for the first time applying to a job. What are the most important things that resume has to have?
Well, if it's a student, then if they've done internships, they have to mention that. It doesn't matter. Your experience is your experience, whether you were paid for it or not. So that's number one. You have to mention internships. What's very important, for whatever reason, associations they belong to while they were in school, organizations, if they have posts like student president, put that down, even if it's high school. Shows leadership, you did above and beyond. That has to be included. Obviously, if they speak several or even one other language, put it down. Culture is very important, what else do we have to say? Yes, of course, if you're just graduating, your GPA is important. If you made Dean's List, it's important. Not once you start working and have work experience. If you work part-time stocking shelves, do that. I mentioned that. But don't just say I stock shelves.
Yes.
it has to be worded a little nicer than that. And then if they did that, maybe, excuse me, they had team meetings. So they're used to that, right? Maybe they had to do inventory. So they have some logistics. I mean, those are the things they have to think about. The above and beyond the studies work that they have done, paid or unpaid.
Exactly. So it one of the things that I tell people when it's a student when they were applying when I used to work in corporate
Mm-hmm.
was they will come without the resume, and one of the things that was the office will turn them down and tell them you have to come back with a resume.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we'll just give them an application and they thought that the application was sufficient. The application is not sufficient. The application is actually something that is required for the job, the workplace, to put it in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Not, but it has nothing to do with the resume.
Right.
um so there is a big differentiation. The resume, it stands out because it's unique. It talks about you.
Yes. Well, it talks about facts and your accomplishments. That's why you need a LinkedIn profile today as well, because 92% of employers, if they like your resume, will check you out on LinkedIn first. And it doesn't matter if you're starting out or if you're an executive. And the LinkedIn is a little more personal. A lot of people plunk their resume in their LinkedIn. No, no, no. It's a different document. Your experience is your experience, such as it is, but the about is very important to connect. So, and that has to be differentiated from the resume as well, you know?
Yes.
So, and we're talking about people just starting out, but even executives have a hard time writing their own resumes at times. So it's hard to do your own work because it's human nature not to toot your horn too much. But
Yes.
this is unfortunately in the US, you have to toot your horn. So not in other countries. Resumes vary very differently from other countries to the US. Um, but yeah, so and you have to do it in as few words as possible, so as succinctly as possible. So every word begins to count, right? That you put on there.
Yes.
And this is true sometimes with students as well, but they do have to talk about all their extracurricular activities. Sports, I didn't mention sports. Sports are important for people starting out as well.
Yes, because it shows team play.
Again, that's right. That's right. Plus the fact they're in good shape. That's why if I have clients who run marathons, depending on the job they do, I'll put it in there at the end, even though you don't talk about interests and hobbies on a resume. You can do it in the LinkedIn profile, but not on the resume. So,
Yes.
I would put it in there just to show they're in great shape.
Yes, it's an accomplishment actually to
It
complete one.
is. It is.
So now let's talk about somebody that is transitioning careers.
Yes.
What is the best way to handle the transition of a career? Because you have to change your resume, you have to change the things that you're doing if you're going
Mhm.
to a total different field.
Correct. So what you do is you take the responsibilities you had, the accomplishments you had, and we all have transferable skills. Just because you've done something for 30 years doesn't mean you can't do anything else. You transfer your skills and you apply them to the new position you want to have. But first, when you transition in careers, you have to decide where you want to go and what you want to do. Otherwise, you won't make it because every resume today has to be targeted. Now, that doesn't mean, let's say you're in pharmaceuticals, that you have to change it for every position. You may change one or two lines at the top and you keep the rest. But if you go like from academia to something else, now we have to talk about other things, right? So, but your skills are your skills. It doesn't mean it can't be applied to a different field.
Yes, exactly. For instance, a project manager, and I'm saying it just because I work in project management,
Yeah.
but project management is applicable everywhere. So you need to recognize, and what a better way to do this than hiring somebody, like you say, that will help them uh, highlight these transferable skills,
Skills. Hmm.
right?
Yes, and put their accomplishments in a different light. So they have to be worded differently so that it applies to the new position. And
Ex-
then once they get the foot in the door, they have to be able to ace the interview again, right?
Yes.
That is why I mean, I know not everybody's going to come to me, but I highly recommend to your audience to work with a career coach because there's so much going on today. It's impossible for one person to keep up with everything. I belong to various organizations, so I keep getting updates of what's happening in the different fields. So this is how I keep up to be ahead of things for my clients. But if you're a person alone, it's going to be a
Yes.
lot tougher.
Yes, and then what a better way to do it than hiring somebody that is an expert and has done it over and over again
Right.
with
Your return
different.
on investment is really worthwhile. But
It
having said that, the people need to do their due diligence into whom they're hiring, right? Look at the professional as organizations. They have a professional association of resume writers, right? The National Resume Writers Association, the Career Directors International. These are all good organizations for them to find resume writers and coaches to get them on track.
Oh, look at that. So those are very important for people to know, that when you are hiring somebody that is a career counselor or a coach,
Coach.
to have those. Um, very, very important.
Yes.
Um, so also, what is that you have to consider when you want to ask for more money?
Uh, Before you do that, you must have kept track of all your accomplishments, however small they may be, what you contributed to meetings, how you keep up. Maybe it's newspaper articles. Uh, Maybe it's a new idea you found somewhere that you brought to the team. All these things you need to keep track of to show that you've earned your keep, as it were. And now, because of this extra stuff, you're entitled to a raise. I mean, you can't just say, I need a raise. You have
Yes.
to show, once you've been somewhere, you have to keep track of your accomplishments, no matter how small they are. So when your performance review comes up, you say, hey, Mr. or Ms. Manager, this is what I've accomplished since our last review, and then when it comes time to talk about salary, you bring that up, which is why it is so important
Mhm.
when I coach my clients during interviewing techniques, also with compensations negotiation. I say compensation because it's more than just salary. It's health insurance. Maybe it's gas for your car. Maybe it's a gym membership. I don't know. Whatever it is that you need, it's on a personal basis there. But there are like more than 20 items you can negotiate right from the start, because the higher you go in, the easier it is to scale up, right?
Oh,
So that's what you have to do. If you want to ask for a salary raise, you need to keep track of your accomplishments.
okay. And then now let's talk about another thing. Yes.
I want to add one more thing. Let's say if you observe your manager is doing a thing a certain way and you learn from it and it enhanced your work, that's also an accomplishment. Put that
Oh,
on the
yes.
performance. Sorry. Go ahead, Maritza.
Yes,
Sorry.
no, that is very true. If you learn a new thing and you are taking on new task, that is also a way that, look, now I'm doing more.
Right, right.
Before I didn't know. Now I know these things, and now I'm doing them.
Correct. Hmm.
Um, and then now in the opposite spectrum,
Yes.
how does somebody, because it is possible, but you have to do it right. When somebody is fired,
Then
I
what?
and then how do they look for a job opportunity that allows them to make the same or more money?
Okay. So it depends on why they are fired. If it's for no fault of their own, it was reorganization within the company, that's not going to be a big problem. Well, it depends on the employment situation in a particular market at that time. But technically, there should not be a problem. Now, if you're fired because of non performance, or you stole, or you did anything that wasn't quite legal, that's a different story. So we have to
Yes.
separate that. If they were terminated through no fault of their own, then it's very easy when you go in an interview to say, my values no longer aligned with the corporation or the company I was working for. So I decided to take another path. You never, never, ever badmouth your previous employer, because then the prospective one is going to say, oh, listen to what he or she is saying about previous employer. What are they going to say after they've worked here? You
About
understand? So
us.
never, ever. Now, obviously, you cannot badmouth them if you were laid off because or terminated because you did something illegal, right?
Yes.
It's never advisable. So when they get terminated, though, even though the person cannot see it at the time, it's a silver lining because they have a chance to take a different direction if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're back to what we've been discussing throughout this conversation, right? How do you transition to a new
To
career?
a new career. That makes sense. And
You
then,
can, yeah, you can do that or stay in the same career, but then it's important to learn interviewing techniques to
yeah,
bypass all of that. Yes.
yes, the interviewing techniques are very important. And one of the another situation is when the employee decides to quit the job for because it doesn't the whatever the company doesn't hold their values, or they were in a toxic environment.
Environment, yeah.
It is very difficult for them to explain the reasons why.
No, like I said before, just say their philosophy or their vision no longer aligned with the company's, or the company changed direction once it was taken over, and it no longer aligned with their values, if they don't want to say vision or whatever. Those are perfectly good reasons. Nobody's going to fault them for that today. Even I'm dating myself now, but even in the 70s, you worked your entire life and you got your gold watch before you retired. And if you were laid off, it was the end of the world. It was like a black spot on you. Not anymore. Everybody moves around today. Everybody. And actually, it's not a bad thing for the younger people to move around and not stay long with a company so that they acquire different experiences that all adds to their value eventually, you see. So that's not a bad thing either. But they can stay in the same field. Or, like I say, it's a perfect way to start doing what you wanted to do, whether you decide to be an entrepreneur or work for somebody else.
Exactly. And then you said something very important, and we'll go back to the interview techniques, but you just mentioned something very, very important, and
Yes,
it's that in today's world, people are not staying in one place because they want to know more, they want to learn more, they want to grow, or simply they just realize that they want to do something else and they are not fulfilled. So it really
correct.
is not, when they are quitting, is not really because they were not performing or something negative or a toxic environment. It
Right.
also is because they want something else, or they actually are thinking on themselves.
Now, there's another thing I'd like to point out, and hopefully nobody's in that situation, people among your audience, but Everything you do today, Google records, right? So what if you're unfairly targeted? You get lawsuits against you that have nothing to do with what you've been doing. They're unfair, they're unjustified, but there they are.
Yeah.
So this is why it's important to know how to conduct a job search too, because if you're in that position and you get terminated, the first things people are going to see, all these lawsuits against you. So that's when it's important to know how to get behind the curtain, behind HR, so that you can immediately address those issues.
Oh, I understand.
See,
Oh,
that is important. So you bypass that. Uh, I'm not talking now about people who were incarcerated. That's another way of working. I've helped those people too, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm thinking of a particular client who was unjustly accused and could prove it that it was unjust and had all these all these lawsuits against him that were listed on Google. And then, the prospective employer said, I don't want this employee. But if this is how I teach my clients to get behind the curtain so that they can talk with the hiring people, hiring managers or C-suite people, whatever it takes, depending on the level they're at, so they can address the issue right away. Plus, they get to see a face rather than a name on a document, applying. There are many, many different facets to job search.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, there are different phases of it, and there are also different ways to approach the companies that you're applying and the HR and the hiring managers.
Yes.
So in what it goes to the interview, what are some of the tips that you recommend to your clients to get prepared?
First of all, I recommend they go to the company and stay outside and watch people come out of work and see whether they're happy or unhappy. So that gives them a clue. It also
Okay.
gives them a clue on how they are dressed
Oh,
because, so let me take extremes, right?
mhm.
If you are a man and you want to work in a clothing store, you need to be in a suit and tie. But if you work for the Gap, they're going to laugh at you. You have to be in jeans and tops, right?
Yeah.
So go and look at the culture of the company, first of all. So you know how to blend in. So you already present yourself the proper way.
Okay.
How to prepare. Make sure that the person who is on the resume is the person you are. Because you cannot go and tell, there are not many rules to resume writing, but there is one golden rule. Do not lie. Do not ever, ever, ever lie on a resume because you'll be found out.
Okay.
Even if it's a few years down the road and you can still be laid off. Um, but so that's one thing. I would read the website of the company you're applying to so you know what it is that they do. So you know how you can contribute, you know, and again, this is taught in, during interviews, how you
Yes.
conduct a conversation. You want to, it's not just I need a job. What do you want to do? Anything. Just get me a job. No, it's not up to the employer to figure out where you fit. You tell
Exactly.
what it is you'd like to do and how you can contribute, and you find this out by reading the website. Also, there's a Hoover. I think it's Hoover's. I always get this confused. The vacuum cleaner, I think, is Hoover. The website is
Oh, yes.
hoovers with an S.com. Part of it is free, part of it you have to pay for, but they also publish a book which you can check out at the library. Make sure you have the latest editions. They tell
Okay.
you who the president is, vice president, secretary, what they do, the charities they contribute to or help out. That's important too because maybe you have an interest, maybe you don't. But let's say they sponsor 5K walks or 10K walks against cancer. something maybe that you're interested in, maybe not, but pick out something that you have in common. And during the interview, bring up in the conversation, I noticed that XYZ company or this company, raises funds for ABC and
Yes.
incorporate it too. So it's not just about your accomplishments and what you can bring to the company, because you can say, I noticed that you're working on this, and I've always had an interest in you, and you're connected this way, and
So,
talk
okay.
about that. That's another way to be prepared. Now, walking into the interview, and I'm picking things out of the blue. Let's say somebody has a baseball on their desk and they decide, and you have an interest in baseball, you start talking about that first. You make a human connection. Makes so much easier than waiting for the person to go down your resume and start posing questions to you.
Yes.
You want to be very interactive. Very important. You have to understand an interview is just a conversation. It's just a conversation between two people, or maybe more if they have five people in front of you posing questions, but it's still a conversation. And you should always come from a place of strength. It's not, oh, I
Okay.
hope they like me. I hope you're going to. No,
No.
I've done this and you are straight, right? I've done this. I know I can help you with that. This is what I propose. And you go from there. And then, of course, with the questions you need to pose to make sure you're on the right track. And it's a company you'd like to work for. It's a two-way. Because what if they pose illegal questions like, what is your race? Are you married? What's your health like? They're not supposed to ask that.
They're
Are
not.
you any? So, are you sure you want to work for a company like that? Think about it. It's a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
It's a conversation, and come in from a place of strength, but do your homework. Research the company, know what they're about, know who's in charge.
Exactly. And then to towards the questions, it is very important that if you do not, and this is something that I remember, if you do not understand the question, it's okay to ask
Absolutely.
again. And if you don't know how to answer, you can ask for to the hiring manager or the person that is doing the interview, conducting the interview. It's okay if you ask, can you give me an example? I don't understand your question.
You can do that. But what if they pose an irrational question? They've done that to trip you up. They just want to see how you respond, in an unexpected situation. You can always say, like, for a while it was very popular to ask, what is the cubic volume of Mount Fuji? Who knows this? So the answer is very simple. I don't know, but I can certainly research it for you. When do you need to know?
Yeah.
And you're done. And that's the same thing with that. If they pose a question, you're not sure about the answer. I said, well, I don't know, but I can certainly tell you by tomorrow, or when do you need to know? Or if you don't know, like you say, I didn't understand your question. Could you kindly rephrase? That's excellent too,
Yes. And
because
then
it still shows you're in charge, right?
exactly, be assertive, but more and honest,
Right.
and very sure about
Assertive,
who you are.
assertive, not aggressive, right? There's a big
Yes.
difference. Assertive, yes.
Yes, certain of what you're saying.
But
And
don't
you're
be
accomplished.
obnoxious either.
Yes,
Yes.
there are many things that come on, looking for a new position, transitioning to a new job, and
Hmm.
also transitioning from your job to an entrepreneur, or a solopreneur, to opening your own company. That
Right.
also, because usually when you transition to the entrepreneurial world, you start with very low rates. I don't know why we all do it. You start with not charging enough because you are thinking, I need the
No.
client.
Yes, but you see, you're actually rendering yourself a disservice. You really are. Um, you have to charge what you're worth. And if people say no, they're not your client. It's very simple. You know, uh, now there are some people who cannot afford your services. Like I work pro bono for the women who come out of abuse shelters, where they for them to get back on track and all that. I will work for free for them. These women really need help. I do it for men too, but since they've been abused by women, they wouldn't be trusting me. You understand? It's true. So I do that. But everybody else, if they say no and they don't perceive the value of what I bring, to their life, they're not my client.
Yes.
All these people I told you before, their return on investment has been phenomenal.
Exactly. And then to keep our conversation a little move it now a little bit towards the diversity. When
Yeah.
you are, and then we touched it a little bit in the beginning, when you are like let's say here in US and you are from another
Country.
place, you have an accent, and then you have a work experience and probably education from another country.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach that? How do you help your clients approach that?
First of all, I ask them to speak slower. When
Mhm.
they speak English, they have to train to do it slower, so they can be understood. And I work with them on acculturation. So I tell them the habits of the American people. It's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, please. But there are things we do in this country, and you and I had to learn it too, right? That they don't do in other countries. You have to repeat. Here's a big difference. Again, relating it to work. Here, people will work 24/7, right? The store is open 24/7, some areas. Um, they sometimes expect you to work on Sundays or the weekends, sometimes on holidays. It depends on what field you're in, right? But if their project, it has to be done, they call everybody in. Now, if you look at Western Europe, I'm talking especially about Netherlands and Belgium. I'm not so sure about France. I gotta look that up. But they have instituted laws by royal decree because they have kings and queens over there. So a manager is not supposed to call anyone on their staff after working hours. It's
Okay.
illegal. It's punishable by law. If it's a national holiday, cannot be called into work. If there is a special project and needs to be done, and it's unusual certain circumstances, the first 4 hours after normal working time has to be paid double, and the next 4 hours have to be tripling pay.
Oh wow.
So don't expect that when you come here. That's not gonna. That's one way. Then when you're invited, you all. It doesn't matter if it's a person from the U.S. going abroad or a person from abroad coming here. The etiquette is different. How do you introduce someone to another person in a business setting versus a social setting? That has to be taught. Some gifts are inappropriate. What it may be acceptable in your country may not be here, and vice versa.
Okay.
So I all that is what I talk about with my client because yes, it's not related directly to the interview, but these are things they need to know before they start.
Yes.
And then I quite often, especially with Asian people, I have to make sure that they are assertive because in those countries you cannot be assertive. And here you have to be. So that was your question, right? What do I do
Yes.
with these people?
Yes.
I want to make
No,
sure
you
I'm
you you
addressing.
expanded perfectly and beautifully.
So how to be more assertive, um, not to bow down like they do in the countries. It's not here.
Mhm.
even for me, it was a big adjustment, and it's not as big as with Asia, coming from Western Europe. But I always used to address everybody by Mr. or Mrs. with their last name, because that's proper business form, not in the US. They right away want to be a first name basis. It was very hard for me to learn that. But once I did it, the whole dynamic changed, the conversations. I mean, my business took off once I did that rather than being polite as it were.
Yes.
So, uh, yeah, I have to go through that. And then we get how to present yourself in the interview from an assertive point of view. Again, and train them on the questions they need to pose, because in their countries too, it's okay, wait, and I hope they like me, and wait, just answering questions. It would never occur to them to pose questions. So we have to talk about that too. And I teach them how to research the companies to make sure that's, where they want to be. And
Exactly.
that's it until they get acculturated to the United States.
And one of the things that I used to do, and I always told my friends, was taking notes when you are in the interview.
Correct. You can do
because
that.
because it's very important, the follow up. You need to follow up with the interviewer.
That's why it's also good to get each person's business card. And if they don't have a business card, to get their name and email if possible. If they won't give it to you, there's a guard outside the door. The guard is the secretary on the phone.
Yes.
And get it from, usually it's a lady, but sometimes there are men. So get it from that person so you can follow up properly. Because again, now you're doing due diligence and you show you go above and beyond. And that's what they're looking for as well. You see, so that's important too. Absolutely. What you're saying is,
Exactly. And
and
then
even,
you mentioned something very important, is whenever you come to another country, you
mm-hmm,
go to another country to apply, and
mm-hmm,
it's very important to look what are the etiquette um, protocols in that country when taking an interview. And that's something that you can Google. And there are books also written about it.
right,
Um, but it's very important to know what is the protocol. Just
right.
for instance, in France, you do not do interviews on a Friday. So so try
Well,
to make
that's right.
sure you are not going to be imposing your needs when
Mm-hmm.
you're actually looking for a job.
And also, when you follow up here in the States, you don't want to do it on a Monday morning because everybody's still catching up from the weekend. And you don't want to do it on a Friday afternoon when everybody's already on the
It's
weekend,
you're gonna be forgotten. Yeah, it is better to wait. How long is too long, and how long is too soon to follow up?
We recommend our clients that once they send out the resume, to follow up within 36 hours. So be careful how you send it out. So you don't have to follow up on a Friday afternoon or a Monday morning. 36 hours and just follow up to say, did you receive the resume? I didn't hear anything back. I'm just concerned you may not have arrived. Something like that. And then they'll say, well, when do you think a decision will be made? And they may say not for another 3 weeks or, maybe next week,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. Try to follow up in that time period just to see if you're in the running, but it gets your name again in front of them.
Exactly. So
So,
we are coming up to the top of the hour, and this has
yes.
been so insightful for everybody because it teaches us how to be able to ask for what we're worth,
Hmm.
to get the 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 money that we want, to get the job that we will like and enjoy, and to have the dream job
Hmm.
that we want to do, to enjoy what we're doing, whether it's as an entrepreneur or in the workplace. So Miriam, how can our audience contact you?
Okay. So I don't know if they can see it on the podcast here, but
Yes.
my name is MY, because a lot of people do MI here. So my name is MYRIAM hyphen ROSE. My last name is KOHN. I can be found on LinkedIn. My website is reimagineyourcareernow.com. And my number is 661 253 0801.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Miriam.
Thank you.
This was delightful, and I hope it helped a lot of people who want to get a different approach to their career. And remember, everybody, you are loved. You are here because a greater source, God, brought you here with love to love and be loved. Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.